Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com, here with your hurricane outlook and discussion for the 23rd of August, 2016. Let's take a look at what's going on the map today. First of all, the last advisory issued on Fiona. It'll be interesting to see how the remnant vorticity max, or the 850 millibar energy, hangs out with this system, what it does, where it goes, does it try to come back. That's going to be important as we watch what happens with 99L. And then, of course, we have Tropical Storm Gaston, which is well on its way to becoming a hurricane, and it'll stay out here over the open Atlantic, racking up lots and lots of accumulated cyclone energy points, or ACE points, helping to pad the score for the season. It was predicted to be a very busy season compared to the last few. There's Gaston. You can see it really coming together, probably developing an eye in there already. And it's interesting to me that they're not that far apart. You know, it's not like this is way over here or something. So I'm still trying to figure out why this hasn't developed and why this developed so much closer to Africa and where the Saharan air layer originates. I mean, this is just craziness. If I said yesterday, you try to figure out why something doesn't work the way you think it should, and that's part of the overall understanding. You know, it's just a big mystery. So let's take a look at what we do know. We know what we don't know in this case, and that is apparently a lot. We don't know a lot. We don't know why this isn't developing like we expected it would. But let's take a look at what we do see. First of all, you can tell that it's a little bit elongated now and starting to stretch out just a little bit, tilted the tropical wave axis a little bit. And you can see that over this one. I got ahead of myself. The vorticity signature definitely stretching out a little bit. It's not round. I mean, there's Gaston, and it's nice and round. Even the remnant vorticity signature of Fiona is nice and round. And you can also see the vorticity associated with the front that came off the eastern United States, bringing a cooler and drier air mass for the time being. So this doesn't bode very well for development overall, that sort of tilted look to it. So we'll have to wait and see. Does it come back and look more round in appearance? We'll just have to wait and see about that. Now the models, and I'm going to talk a lot about those today, just to kind of give you an idea of the discrepancies between the two powerhouse globals, and that would be the GFS, or Global Forecast System. That is the American-generated model from the INCEP, National Centers for Environmental Prediction, and the NOAA model of choice, etc. Well, not necessarily the model of choice, but it is the American main computer model and its ensemble members. Very complicated. And I'm going to discuss the Euro, the ECMWF, as well. First of all, the 12 UTC or 12Z guidance, showing the various different model output from some of the consensus models through the various versions of the GFDL and some of the averages in here, and then your simpler numeric models, all of those thrown into the mix. And overall, you can see that the envelope of guidance is somewhat tight. We're not having anything like this and over here where you have thousands of miles between the two. It's a fairly tightly clustered grouping of models suggesting an impact first here in the northern Leeward Islands, the Puerto Rico, U.S., British Virgin Islands, etc. Maybe not directly, but all that energy coming in with squally weather is a possibility, and then perhaps skirting on the north coast of Hispaniola, and then eventually into the Bahamas, and maybe South Florida. So again, let's take a look at the vorticity signature and kind of set the stage for how everything evolves. And then I'm going to show you the Euro run, literally hot off the presses, as it's come out in just the last little while. So there's that tilted vorticity, which makes me think, well, this really isn't that healthy. But again, you look at the satellite animation, and that's not too bad overall. Certainly has deep convection associated with it, which we've been lacking the last several days until recently. So it does have some pros in its favor, and it has some cons going against it. So this is the Euro. This is the graphics for the 500 millibar and the mean sea level pressure coming off, generated from the Tropical Tidbits site from Levi Cowan. He's a student at Florida State University, an incredible programmer, so kudos to him for being able to generate these graphics and provide them on his website for free, tropicaltidbits.com. Want to make sure I give credit where credit is due. So this is the 24-hour forecast, valid tomorrow morning. There you see it right there. And there is our system. Let me outline it in yellow. The European showing it down to about 10 millibars. And this is higher up in the atmosphere, a very large area of high pressure. And so the pressure field will be a little bit lower in this shade of red. And these different lines or isobars represent different thicknesses in the atmosphere, depending on what level you're in. The current map shows the isobars representing sea level pressure, but then the thickness lines around here are not implicitly shown, but these would represent, you look at the shading, thicker amounts of air. Basically, the atmosphere has large areas of high pressure. We talked about that the other day, and there are conversely troughs of low pressure in the atmosphere. So let's move on and see what happens. This is 48 hours. The European model, at least publicly available, is basically every 24 hours. That's how the frames go. So here it is, valid 48 hours out, trying to strengthen in the southeast Bahamas, and keep your eye on what goes on up here over the southeast United States over the next couple of frames. This is 72 hours. Ridging started to build in over the mid-Atlantic states. There's our system here entering into the Bahamas just east of there, and the sea level pressure suggesting here at this resolution about 1,008 millibars, and that's roughly what it is now for what it's worth. Recon flew in, it's about 1,009 millibars or so. Moving on out to 96 hours, it begins to strengthen, and you can see as these isobars start to tighten, more and more lines of equal pressure indicate stronger wind. And there's Gaston coming into the view, and it's very strong. Looks like about, 983 in there, something like that. It's hard for me to read that. But that's a strong hurricane for sure, probably a Category 2, maybe even a 3 at the resolution that this is showing. But important for us here along the southeast and maybe the Gulf Coast, look at what's happening up here. There is no way in our physical world, if this was a hurricane, just as an example, that this goes into that. This air mass is more dense than is this. And so think about a large water balloon and a smaller water balloon. The smaller water balloon isn't going to just go right through the larger water balloon. And since the atmosphere is not solids and fluids interacting with each other like a cork in a stream that we've heard mentioned many times with steering, or a log floating in a river or whatever, logs and corks are generally solid, the river is fluid. These are much more fluids interacting with each other. Different thicknesses and buoyancies of fluids, mind you. And so the tropical cyclone will represent a lot of heat and energy and rainfall, but it's not going to go into an area of 594 thickness in the atmosphere. It just doesn't do that. So instead it'll come in and kind of bend, as you'll see, south of that ridge of high pressure. Remember, the flow around high pressure in the northern hemisphere is clockwise, all right? And so this would come up and then turn west underneath that ridge. I think most people get that. And if we move on out to 120 hours, very strong mid-level ridging all the way up to the 500 millibar level with a surface high as well. So this is deep from the surface, 1024 millibars at the surface, all the way up through the thick part of the atmosphere, the 500 millibar level, very stout, what we call 500 millibar ridge. And there is what would be maybe a hurricane. Not for me to decide. I'm just looking at the map just like you can. And it looks like it says about 994 or something. And there's different resolutions that we can look for, but that's really pointless right now. I want to just talk about if this develops, this is what the steering looks like, bringing it right into Florida, blocked from going north because of this large area of high pressure developing over the mid-Atlantic states. And finally, at day 6, it starts to get out into the Gulf of Mexico, pressure down to about 973 millibars, very tightly packed. Isobars in there, similar to what you see out here with Gaston, showing a well-developed tropical cyclone in the southeast Gulf. And then there's the ridge of high pressure up here starting to break down a little bit. And so maybe this will continue on and then curve some. I don't know. This is pretty far out in time. I'm looking at day 6. Normally, I don't like to go past day 5, but just to kind of show you the continuity, this is what we are looking at. So the players here seem to certainly be, does this develop from where it is now on its way west-northwest into the Bahamas and then curve across Florida? Does it even develop at all? That is the most important part, obviously. And then secondarily, what happens with this area of dense high pressure over the mid-Atlantic states acting like a block, a large area of blocking air, literally, to send this more westerly into Florida? Does that come to fruition? Generally speaking, the European model is pretty reliable, and it doesn't botch the larger scale weather patterns very often, especially these 500 millibar patterns of how the atmosphere with its troughs and ridges behaves. So first we have to see if we even have something to deal with. And by the way, this is a close-up at day 5, 120 hours of a possible hurricane here along the southeast Florida coast. Just look at this and say, you know, there might be a hurricane. It's August. There might be a hurricane, whether or not this was there at some point. So look at this and say, all right, I've been putting off getting ready. I might as well do something to get ready, at least be more aware, etc., because a lot can change. We know that, and we don't even have a formed system yet, but just kind of showing you, and I'm going to go into the next phase of this, the model discrepancies kind of helps to show the uncertainty here, because look at what the GFS has at day 5. Nothing. Nothing there. You don't even see it reflected in the 500 millibar level at all. There's that big ridge, though, so that's one thing at day 5. Look at that. That's the European. That's the GFS. Both of them depict the well-established 500 millibar pattern, basically, or setup, whatever you want to call it. The biggest difference, obviously, the Euro has a potential hurricane here. The GFS has nothing to speak of at all. So why? I wish I knew that. I'm not even going to pretend to know. Maybe, there's, you know what? I can't even. My brain can't comprehend it. I don't know why. The different people that develop these models with higher pay grades than mine would have to explain it. Looking at the same time frame, 120 hours trying to figure this out, at 200 millibars, which is up high in the atmosphere, relatively speaking, I'm looking to see, is there strong wind cutting across Florida that would shear the system? How could the Euro show such a strong system and the GFS have nothing? Well, there is a fairly potent upper level low here. You can clearly see that. This is all counterclockwise rotation. But sometimes these help to sort of pull the heat out of a tropical cyclone. And I remember during Katrina, and this is just an example of remembering something from the past, at one point an upper level low, I believe, was to its east, and it was acting as the forecaster on duty referred to it as a heat sink, helping to draw that energy out in that cold core upper level low, and everything just came together and you had a massive Category 5 hurricane in the Gulf. That was on the east side of Katrina, if I recall. If there is indeed a hurricane here, as the Euro says, well, this upper level low is on the west side. So I don't know how that changes the equation, if it makes it relevant at all, but it just shows you the sort of hair-pulling, head-scratching, I won't call it quite madness yet, but this discrepancy is tough because people want to know. Because, if you knew a hurricane was coming this far out, you would definitely get ready, and that would be a gift if we knew they were coming from 6 days away, or for sure 5 days away. As of now, it's still an elongated, disorganized area of low pressure, tropical wave, and we have to just keep waiting. And the thing that I hate about that the most, every day that we have to keep waiting for it to develop, is a day less for people to prepare. And that's not good at all. So we'll see. All right, I will keep posting what I know on hurricanetrack.com. You can also follow along, I haven't mentioned this yet, in our app. We've actually had it for 4 years now. It's called Hurricane Impact. It's 2 words. Search for that on the App Store. Hurricane Impact. Everything that I post on hurricanetrack.com gets posted to the app instantaneously, so you can take that with you on the go. It's got a great video section with all the videos cataloged right there. You just pull down to refresh for the latest one, like this one, for example. And, of course, I'll be posting on social media, Twitter and Facebook, as I learn more. All right, so no easy answers again today. I wish I had them. Hopefully understood my presentation as best as I could explain it, and we'll see what happens from here. All right? Have a good rest of your whatever today is. Is it 23rd? It's Tuesday. Wow, that's pretty bad. So let me start that over. Have a great rest of your Tuesday afternoon. Again, I'm Mark Sudduth for hurricanetrack.com. Thanks as always for tuning in, and I'll talk to you again tomorrow.